Maximize your yields while spreading out your workload with the earliest maturing winter cereal. Visit kws.com/CA to see how our hybrid rye varieties can work for you. High yields, high quality, high value for your farm. KWS, seeding the future since 1856.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Monday edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, of course, a big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. Well, it is Monday, and we are broadcasting today from Edmonton, Alberta. That's right. We are in the capital city of Alberta. I'm here for Seeds Canada's summer meeting. Looking forward to taking part. Going to be on the agenda tomorrow. Going to be hosting and moderating a political panel talking about the future of research in Canada from an agriculture perspective. So I'm really looking forward to this. Got a few MPs from different political parties that'll be participating. Tyler McCann from CAPI actually is going to give a presentation right before our panel, setting the stage for research in Canada, and also relative to some other countries around the world who we do compete with. How is Canada doing from a research perspective? So I'm looking forward to the whole opportunity. It's going to be great, and of course, going to see a lot of fans and listeners, of course, from the industry side of Real Agriculture and RealAg Radio, and looking forward to doing that. And big reception tonight, actually very, very shortly here, and then a full day tomorrow at the meeting. So really looking forward to it. From my hotel room, I can actually see the Rogers Center, the home of the Edmonton Oilers. I'll tell you, this ice district in Edmonton, if you have never been down here, it is phenomenal. No wonder it's the envy of what Calgary has versus what Edmonton has here is absolutely amazing. It is fantastic. So, pretty cool. You can see why concerts come here, and they'll do Garth Brooks was here for a week, 5 shows, and other people come in and sort of almost do set up this as their home place, right? Because it is so fantastic. So looking forward to being in Edmonton here for the early part of the week. Wednesday, I'm going to be at the Calgary Stampede. Going to be there for the agricultural big party that happens on Wednesday afternoon, put on by the International Ag Committee. So looking forward to that as well. And once again, going to run into a lot of different people in the industry. I'm going to be emceeing that event. So looking forward to that. Hey, today on the show, it is Agronomic Monday, of course, and boy, the temperatures are sure being dialed up. It is going to be high 30s in parts of the prairies. I've been begging for warmer weather, finally, and it is here. It is hot, and I personally, for me, I love it. For the plants, I'm not so sure. Maybe a little bit too hot, and going to create some problems probably for some of you trying to complete spraying, and we've got some big storms. This is where we get worried about hail. We've had some moisture. It's now really hot. We get those storm cells brewing. So it's going to be, and I saw some crops in Saskatchewan got just shredded on the weekend. So, from Twitter. So that's ugly stuff. So hopefully we can avoid some of this hail because we got a pretty decent crop out there, and it sucks to get it hit by the big white combine. Well, today on the show, we are going to dig into some agronomics. We've got coming up here Rigas Karamanos talking about nitrogen management. Peter W.P. Johnson will be with us. We got Paul Brisebois with AGI and a product spotlight. Tom Wolf from Sprayers 101 will join us talking about sprayer cleanout. And we'll finish up talking about fusarium head blight with Dr. Kelly Turkington of AAFC out of Lacombe. If you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find Real Agriculture across all the different social media platforms. You're also more than welcome to call the Real Ag feedback line. That number is 855-776-6147. And you dial that number, you press the number 3, and you leave me a message. That's 855-776-6147. Well, tell you what, let's hear from Rigas Karamanos. I love hearing from Rigas. And Chase Chambers was at a Farming Smarter event that happened outside of Lethbridge and caught up with Rigas to chat about nitrogen management.
Cool. So first of all, do you want to talk just on a general level about some of the information you presented today?
Yes, actually, I just presented the overall main principle of applying fertilizers, which is the 4R, the right source, the right time, the right place, and the right rate, and gave a specific emphasis on the place and also the source, because, these days we're faced with all the gaseous emissions, and we want to make sure that fertilizers are being placed in the right place, and also we use the right sources so that we can minimize the gaseous losses to the air, to the atmosphere. So, we talked today about a number of placements, like starting, for example, with deep banding. And I went back in history and explained to the people that deep banding was introduced back in the 60s, 70s when anhydrous ammonia was brought to Western Canada, and people were getting extremely good yields. At that time, they were just broadcasting urea. And at that time, John Harapiak, who was with the Western Co-op Fertilizers, an amazing person, by the way, he said, well, wait a minute, let's put urea where we put anhydrous. And all of a sudden, just excellent results. So I emphasize that, as far as placement, that deep banding is the preferred method of applying nitrogen fertilizer. And when we say deep banding, we mean more than 2.5 inches depth. Now, if it's shallower, then you have shallow banding, and there are a number of issues associated with it. And I showed some results to the people about what happens when you have shallow banding. The losses, can be quite higher. Why? Because the same reactions take place no matter where you place your fertilizer, nitrogen, the urea in particular. However, when you place them at depth, the gas that is created, the ammonia, because urea will be converted to ammonium, and that ammonia is going to be absorbed by the 2.5, 3 inches above where you placed it. Whereas with a shallow banding, there is not enough depth, and when you broadcast, of course, there is nothing to prevent. So that's where I came up, with the next point, and that is to use enhanced efficiency products that will minimize losses. And I show them how urea, for example, is converted to ammonium, and then ammonium nitrite and nitrate. And ammonium is subject to volatilization. Nitrate is subject to denitrification. And you have to use a urease inhibitor to prevent the volatilization losses. And also you want to use a nitrification inhibitor to prevent the denitrification losses. So we covered those components of nitrogen. I did not go into details about specific products, but I did tell them that to be very cognizant of the research that exists and the products that work, because not all products will give you the same result. So, and also I covered a little bit about top dressing, because what happens, people spray urea, UAN, urea ammonium nitrate. It's liquid urea, and I show them the results from a master's thesis at the University of Manitoba, where they covered half of the treatments with plastic and they left the other ones bare. And when they covered with plastic, the recovery was very low, 10-12%. When they bare, it was up to 45 to 70%, which means when you apply foliar, the majority of it either rolls down through the stems into the soil, or whatever is in the soil, it's taken up by the roots and comes up to the surface. So, we talked about, how to prevent those losses. And also a little bit about polymer coated product, it's perfect for seed placement, and also should be used in conjunction with urea in some cases.
Awesome. So what would maybe a final takeaway for farmers be from this presentation, if you had to summarize?
Well, if I would summarize, it's to be the losses, and I show them some results. You have to have the weather conditions that will lead to the losses. For example, I mentioned to them there is that research at the Washington State University showing that on a dry soil they broadcasted urea and then they applied different rates of irrigation. And when they only put 1/8 of an inch of irrigation, they had 70% losses. When they had just about an inch, it was 5% loss. So, you have to put things into perspective. And I show them results where sometimes you don't get any benefit because you don't need it. So, it's very difficult to determine, whether you need something or not because we don't know how the weather is going to be, But in essence, it's a good idea to have an overall sense of how these products work and when to use them. And if you don't need them, just don't spend the money on it, That's the moral of the story.
That was Rigas Karamanos. If you've been in the industry of agriculture the past number of 2 decades, you've heard from Rigas. He is an expert when it comes to nutrients and specifically nitrogen. Hey, when we come back on RealAg Radio, we are going to hear from Peter Repeat Johnson. He's pulled over. He's been trying to get started with his wheat harvest. We'll find out how he's making out. He's on the side of the field, and we'll talk to him when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147.
Join us for the Canadian Beef Industry Conference, August 19th to 22nd in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Spend time networking on the trade show floor, hear from keynote speakers, and take in breakout sessions designed to increase profit, manage your rangeland, and navigate trends. Get up close to advanced techniques and hands-on demos, and kicking it all off is Lamley's Bull event. Proud, sustainable, and innovative, we are beef. Registration is now open. Visit CanadianBeefIndustryConference.com for full details and to register.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
The Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com has everything you need to get your crop off to a great start and a strong finish. Whether you're growing chickpeas, faba beans, lentils, or peas, you'll get all the latest and best agronomic information at PulseSchool.com. A library of top-notch agronomy videos from industry experts available on demand at your fingertips. Visit the Pulse School, brought to you by BASF on RealAgriculture.com.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this Monday for Agronomic Monday. Shaun Haney, your host. Hey, I want to tell you about KWS Seeds. Maximize your yields with spreading out your workload with the earliest maturing winter cereal from KWS Seeds. Visit kws.com/ca. See how their hybrid rye varieties can help and work for you. High yields, high quality, high value for your farm. KWS seeding the future since 1856. That's right, 1856. That's a long time, everybody. Okay, joining us right now is Peter Repeat Johnson. Pete, how we doing?
Awesome, thanks, Shaun. It's a glorious Monday. The sun has been out. There's a bit of cloud from time to time, but we are at wheat harvest. It's going excellently. How could I not be outstanding when we're having great wheat yields and the sun is shining on a Monday afternoon?
Yeah, yields look quite optimistic. There is a lot of concern out there about fusarium in some parts of Ontario for sure, and that early harvest is absolutely critical in terms of dealing with some of those dawn levels.
Yeah, 100%. And so far, as you say, the early harvest has had very low dawn levels. We sort of expected that because when we were on the performance trial tour and in the earlier maturing areas, the early to head wheat looked really quite clean. But the late heading wheat, and there was almost a 7 to 10 day difference in heading. It's really a wide window. We don't normally see that much of a window, but those late maturing varieties, they were quite nasty for fusarium. We got to Ridgetown, where things again headed out that bit later. There seemed to be lots there as well. Hopefully, from field reports, we don't think it's going to be awful, but get it out of the field early. And the other thing growers are really pushing, Sunday, Monday, tomorrow they'll push again because the hurricane theoretically is going to hit southwestern Ontario on Wednesday late in the day. So a lot of guys trying to get to the field early and get it out, beat that hurricane. We're already, surprisingly enough, starting to get reports of the odd sprouts showing up in the wheat crop, and you kind of go, how the heck does that happen? But that happens when it's just always raining. We were diagnostic days last week, and it would shower, and then the sun would come out, and you just Tuesday as well, we get a few drops, and just kind of it's sprouting weather. Fortunately, falling numbers have been holding up pretty well so far, but get it out of the field.
The other thing that's happening is, I've been complaining for weeks. It's been so bloody cold. We have not seen any sort of summer-like conditions in Western Canada. And then, wow, it's here this week. I think we're going to be upper 30 Celsius in parts of Western Canada. I know in Lethbridge, where I am, it's like 38, I think, on Wednesday. So that's, maybe, well, I don't know if it's a suntan or a sunburn, but that was a little bit more than I was asking for, Pete.
Yeah, you should not have carried on and whined so much about it, because Mother Nature listened to you, Shaun. 38. That's just wipeout for the wheat crop, the barley crop. Like anytime it goes over 25, it's a negative on cereal crops. You get over 30, it's kind of like, this is bad. You go over 35, and things just fall apart on the wheat crop. So I hope that the forecast is wrong and that at least it stays under 35 Celsius, because that will be nasty. And I know corn and soybeans like the heat. Even they don't want 38, but they definitely want, 28 to 32. But it's not good for the spring cereal crop. In fact, the warm weeks that we had here in Ontario, back in the middle of June, we just kind of had 7 or 8 days where it suddenly went over 30. My best guess is that we lost 10, 15 bushels in wheat yield from that hot week, because we shortened up grain fill. We're still seeing excellent yields. I'm hearing anywhere from kind of 80 to 140, and I'm sure we'll beat 140 as we move along. Those are excellent yields. Kind of average is when I hear 70 to 110 or 120. So we're really good yields, but I think we could have blown the doors off if we hadn't had a hot week. And so the low yields are definitely in the deep southwest, where the temperatures go higher, as well as where they had too much water. Wheat does not like wet feet. Where there was too much water, they are seeing that water impact yield.
But you're definitely right now, based on the staging of the corn, you're definitely seeing that corn start to pull some moisture right now, right?
I can't believe it, Shaun. All stinking spring, all we have talked about is excess moisture, can't plant, like replants, extend the corn deadline. It's raining, and the corn crop is in its rapid growth phase. It's kind of interesting because I had a few wheat fields besides soybean fields with clients, and I'd walk into the wheat field in early June, and there would be cracks in the soil 2 inches wide where the wheat had pulled so much moisture, the soil had dried out, it had cracked open. You walk into this where they wanted to plant soybeans, and because nothing was sucking moisture, it's just evaporation, and we weren't getting evaporation because it was just always cloudy and damp and showery. It was too wet to plant soybeans. Meanwhile, the wheat crop was running out of moisture. So that's where we're at with the corn crop now. Soybeans, not so much. They haven't started to pull big amounts of water. but the corn crop is moving into that stage where it uses up to 1/3 of an inch of water per day. You get to 38 degrees Celsius, Shaun. I bet you that the corn crop will be pulling maybe even 4/10 of an inch of water per day, trying to cool itself and keep going. When you have 2 inches per foot and the corn crop probably is only rooted 2 feet deep right now, maybe 3 feet deep, it runs out of water amazingly fast. I'm already getting reports on sandier soils of corn wrapping up in the heat of the day. Some growers saying, gosh, I hope the hurricane brings us, an inch or 2 inches of rain because the corn desperately needs it. It's quite a dichotomy.
Yeah, well, and for Southern Alberta, the bulk of those corn acres are on irrigation, thankfully. So otherwise, we wouldn't even have corn, right? So thankfully, those people have pivots to keep that corn fed at this time.
Yeah, the beauty of being able to control the water, what most of us cannot do.
Okay, but it just presents new problems. Like it doesn't eliminate problems. That's one thing about people I think that don't have irrigation you don't realize is that you just have different problems. So
100%. I'm not saying it's easy, but at least if you can take that out of the equation.
Yes.
And there's growers who have been pretty convinced that they're going to gain 50 bushels per acre from irrigation this year on corn. If you can gain that 50 bushels, you still got to manage to get there. You'll have more diseases because you're irrigating and you're keeping that humidity up in the canopy. You got to time your nitrogen right. There's lots of issues from that perspective, but nice to be able to turn the tap on when you need it if you have to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I want to hit on tar spot because up until late last week, we hadn't identified it yet in Ontario. That has changed as of Independence Day. What did Albert Tenuta find? So
Albert, of course, has this site that he grows continuous corn on. It's where they first discovered tar spot back in, what was that, 2017 maybe, something like that. And so they grow corn on corn, and he does his variety testing there, and we always know we're going to see it there first, or we expect to see it there first. But Shaun, regardless of that, tar spot this year is early across much of the U.S. Midwest, right up into Michigan. They found it, I just forget exactly, but maybe 10 days before we found it here in Ontario. They found it in southern portions of Michigan. So it's really interesting from that perspective. We are going to have to pay significant attention to those cornfields that got planted after the 10th of June, or kind of that last window that we could plant corn with Agricor. They extended the deadline to June the 18th. So June the 15th corn, Adam Pfeffer tweeted out it's at 7 leaf. So it's really growing well for 3 weeks, but it's at 7 leaf and tar spot is already here. For the corn that was planted timely, a VT fungicide is going to control that. The fact it's here early means that we really, and the other part of that equation before I finish that thought process is that it's early in the year. A heavy spore load, or the potential of a heavy spore load coming from the U.S. up into Ontario on the storm front, like this hurricane storm front may well bring tar spot spores with it. We haven't had to worry about tar spot much once we go north of about number 7 highway. We get up into Huron, Perth, Wellington, Waterloo. We haven't really worried much about tar spot. We still worry about jib, but this year, I think growers there actually have to start worrying about tar spot. And growers with late planted corn, yeah, she could be nasty. We may have to spray that before VT, but we'll have to scout because most of the time it doesn't ramp up enough before VT. But that late planted corn, it is going to have to be a watch out for sure.
Good info there, because the last couple of years we have not really had much of an impact, right? So this is something and we were really worried about it. I think it was 3 years ago, and now this 24 could be a year where we really have to be on alert about it.
Yeah, and don't forget, Shaun, so the spore load's coming, but that's not the only component. If the spore lands and the leaf stays dry, it'll just sit there.
Okay.
And so you need 7 hours leaf thickness. So you know it's coming. So now pay attention to when you walk into your cornfield at 10 or 11 in the morning. If you're still getting soaked, that's a tar spot day. And so we have to tie the spore load with the right environmental conditions for that disease to really ramp up and take off. And you can use Tar Spotter. It's part of the Field Profit suite of predictive models that Damian Mason out of Wisconsin has put together. An excellent app to have it on your phone. White mold as well. Lots of good stuff there. So unfortunately, it's only corn and soybeans. He doesn't do enough with the real crop, wheat, but we'll get there one way or another.
There you go. Hey, we're going to be hearing from Tom Wolf of Sprayers 101 here a little bit later on the show, talking about sprayer cleanout. You've been seeing some peculiar issues with tank cleanout this year.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things going on. And earlier on, you and I talked about it, the fact that Valterra really seemed to be hanging up on the walls of sprayers. And if you didn't use ammonia to clean the Valterra out, you would get tremendous burn on the wheat crop. Now, fortunately, it's just a burn. It doesn't have long-term impacts, so it isn't what we want to happen. But as we've gotten closer to harvest, the number of sprayer issues that have shown up in the wheat crop, where growers have done what we would consider to be the proper clean-out steps, and more, we're finding just little idiosyncrasies with different sprayers that you would never think would cause a problem. But sometimes it's as simple as a hose that kind of loops down, and for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like it's cleaning. Even when you flush the boom, we're not getting everything out of that loop down in that hose. And you go to spray the next wheat field, and sure enough, when you start, you get these gull's wings or D's in the field, W's in the field, call them what you will, because it's coming out of the lines and into the spray, and the pursuit or whatever that you had in 3 tanks ago is still damaging the wheat crop. So you kind of go, how can that happen? But the wheat crop doesn't lie, so it's definitely happening, and seems to be worse this year, whether it's because the wheat crop had no cuticle and uptake was better, because we're definitely getting better uptake of most herbicides this year than normal. But there is lots of weird stuff going on in the wheat crop. And if you're seeing that, then you have to figure out what the heck is going on in your sprayer. And it's weird. It's not just normal. We missed normal clean out. There's some really interesting stuff happening.
Yeah, and I was talking to somebody last week where we talked about how, when we get we had a very tight sprayer season in Western Canada, right? There was a lot, and then you get the wind on top of it. You change of plans, and when you change your plans, you maybe not going with the best logistical plan, right? And so you're switching products, and you got, the tank cleanup becomes more of a thing, and then you get issues. Unfortunately, like even if you've taken the most care, there's some weird stuff that can happen. So it's just, you got to find out if you do see some of those weird patterns in the field, and hopefully they're just patterns and not like some sort of like a wipeout. You figure out where that's happening, where that critical fail point is, and you solve it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the one, like, pay attention to the symptomology. When we had the Valterra problem, it was the whole field because it was coming off the tank wall. When you see the W's in the field, you know immediately it's somewhere in the lines. It's a line issue. It's not a tank issue. It could be a filter issue, but it'll be a line filter. So you find those diagnostics and utilize them to help you sort out what the heck is going on.
Yeah. Hey, I want to tell everybody, make sure you download this week's episode of Wheat Pete's Word. New episode drops every single Wednesday where Pete answers your agronomic questions. You can get it at realagriculture.com/podcast, or of course, wherever you get your podcast. Pete, I'll let you get back to that combine. You got to crawl up in there, get all dirty and dusty, and that's fun stuff. I don't want to keep you away from it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Shaun. I hate crawling up inside a combine, especially when it's hot and humid, but unfortunately that's where I'm at. And if I'm going to combine wheat, the combine's got to get ready to go. So Wheat Pete is a mechanic today.
Uh-oh, look out, everybody. Hey, we'll be right back on RealAg Radio with Product Spotlight with AGI. Paul Brisebois will be with us right after this.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
Choose Viatude fungicide and unleash best-in-class sclerotinia protection in canola and premium protection against white mold in soybeans. Viatude contains a powerful premix of Onmira Active and prothioconazole. This unique combo delivers high-performance disease control, crop safety, mix compatibility, resistance management, and advanced mobility for excellent coverage and superior plant protection. Choose Viatude fungicide for stronger, more vigorous crops.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomists, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomists with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Now time here on RealAg Radio for a product spotlight, and we are joined by Paul Brisebois. He is AGI Senior Vice President of Canada Farm. Hey, Paul, how's it going?
Great. How are you, Shaun?
I'm doing really good. We're into the summer months here. There's a lot happening on farms across Canada and the U.S. A lot of your customers trying to get this crop finished off and, of course, into the bin. So for you, Paul, what is top of mind for AGI right now as we move into the summer months?
Yeah, thanks, Shaun. You know what? Every year, as you know, is different. I think we talked last year, and a lot of the discussion was on supply chain issues and how we've overcome that. And this year, again, different year. At the beginning of the year, commodity prices were really highlighted and continue to be highlighted in the farm economy. And at the beginning of the year, concerns around drought. Well, what a turnaround, right? In regards to the moisture that we've had all across kind of the Midwest in the US and in Canada. And in some spots, too much rain, right? But always better than drought. Having moisture is good for the business. It's good for producers. As we talked about in the southern regions of Saskatchewan and Alberta, they're having really what's looking to be a banner crops in that area if they continue to get good growing conditions. And I'd say in the Red River Valley in Manitoba, probably a little too wet in some areas. So, you know what? Weather is always a hot topic, right? And we're in the ag industry, and that's what we have to deal with this year.
Yeah, and I think weather is going to be a big topic at Ag in Motion coming up here very shortly as well.
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of conversations about weather. I always look forward to going to Ag in Motion and hooking up with our dealers, having conversations with our farm customers. I know that weather will be a hot topic. I think other hot topics will be storage and availability of storage and what's the plan given there could be a large crop coming in and not great commodity prices. So that right now, I would say most of our dealers, and as I mentioned, we had supply chain issues before. Now we have the opposite where inventory is building up. And, given that we have a good crop coming in, I think they're all well positioned at our dealerships to support demand that we hope comes in later in the summer.
And some 23 crops still out there, right? That's also a factor for sure. And, it's funny, last week on RealAg Radio, I had a farmer say, were just talking about regrets, and he was like, I wish I would build bins for the past couple of years, because I'm really tight on storage based on what I see out in the field and what I have still in inventory. So we got Ag in Motion. Obviously, AGI is going to be there. You got a beautiful facility built at that show at the site. What are some of the big sellers, the things that you think farmers are going to be asking about here and considering for this farm show, and maybe purchasing for going forward?
Yeah, you bet. I think given the moisture conditions, given the crop coming in, and given exactly what you said, Shaun, with regards to commodity prices and probably more storage on farm than in the past. I know we got some data recently, and I know you're tapped into the US as well, that corn storage is higher than, I think it was like 25 or 30% higher than what it's been historically. So, and I suspect it's similar in the Canadian business because of lower commodity prices. So given that, we think typically what happens when you have a late planting season and lots of moisture is you have a late harvest. And late harvest means that you need aeration. Purchasing more storage bins with aeration is beneficial. By securing additional permanent storage, producers have the option to keep their grain in good condition and store it safely for a longer period of time, compared to grain bags, which are typically used, and I know they'll still be used as a temporary storage. But given the fact that we have storage available at farm and we have capacity on build, it allows our producers to capitalize on higher grain prices in the future. And you had just mentioned earlier that there's a lot of farmers that wish they had built more storage and had it available. If you have the ability to put it in place, there's always a positive ROI on having storage on farm. And given that we have great conditioning products, whether that's natural grain drying through our aeration products, Grain Guard aeration, or if you need dryers, Nico dryers on farm, both of those great options to be able to make sure that your crop is going to stay secure for as long as you need to hold it in order to market it in the future.
Well, if you're going to be at Ag in Motion, please go to the AGI booth. Check it out. A lot of great stuff there, as Paul outlined. You can also go to the website, aggrowth.com. Hey, Paul, thanks so much for joining us here with this Product Spotlight.
Thanks, Shaun. Appreciate the time.
Hey, we'll be right back on RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147 Sirius XM right after this.
It's summertime, and you've got a lot of important decisions to make when it comes to your corn crop. Let the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com help guide you through those big decisions with input from leading experts in the field. If it's spray timing, disease identification, or any other field issue, the Corn School's got you covered. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
I get to spend every day talking to farmers in the ag industry through RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio. But nothing is more fun than speaking to an audience live and in person. If you're planning an ag event, book a Real Agriculture speaker to make it a successful and memorable experience. Email shaney@realagriculture.com and you can book myself or any other RealAg personality to speak at your event. Bring your audience all the fun, insight, and energy of Real Agriculture. Next here on RealAg Radio, we're going to hear from Tom Wolf of Sprayers 101. You heard Peter and I chatting earlier about tank cleanout, sprayer cleanout, very, very important. And in a year where people are flipping back and forth from product to product, and this is happening more often, I think, nowadays with the lack of simplicity when it comes to our sprayer operations. We've got to make sure that tank is cleaned out properly. Tom Wolf was at Farming Smarter, and Chase Chambers of Real Agriculture had a chance to catch up with him just outside of a plot in front of a big sprayer, and here's the conversation.
Yeah, we did a little demo where we wanted to show the effectiveness of different cleanout strategies. We ran some Odyssey through a boom, and then followed it up with Liberty right away, Obviously saw some serious Odyssey Group 2 damage on the canola. It was Liberty Link canola. And then we did a little bit of a water clean out, and that was pretty effective actually. But the water plus ammonia did improve on it slightly. The second thing though that we did was we used glyphosate and AIM. And with glyphosate and AIM, when we did not do a clean out, it was a pretty serious problem. And even a water clean out wasn't that great. So the AIM component really stuck around the plastic parts of the boom plumbing, and we had to use a proper water and ammonia rinse to get it perfectly clean. So I guess it depends a little bit on how sticky and how oily the formulation is. That sort of determines the amount of cleaning you have to do.
Okay, so yeah, we talked a lot about sprayer hygiene. What was kind of the main takeaways with that?
Well, the most important thing is to start with proper mixing. You know, many of the problems that are issues in tank cleanout or boom cleanout are the Group 2s. And we also saw the AIM, and they might be oily products. The first thing we're going to do is mix them properly so that they're fully fully hydrated, and then they don't get lodged in some of the plumbing bits that can hold on to them. The second thing to do is after finishing spraying is to clean out immediately. Don't give it a chance to stay in the boom plumbing or the tank any longer than necessary. And particularly the boom. I mean, the tanks are stainless steel now, but the booms are still rubber and plastic. And so we do have problems with some products sticking to those types of components. So get rid of it. You know, do an air purge, do a water rinse, do something, but do not store that chemical mixture in the boom. If you do store something in the boom, store a cleaner in the boom and give it a moment to do its job.
Right, and what are some of the really common issues? You just talked about leaving it too long, but are there any other common issues with tank cleanout?
Yeah, I think the problems are often that we don't know when we're done cleaning, so we're a little bit precautionary. It takes a lot of time. And so, we can do, a triple rinse kind of cleanup that might take, it might take half an hour to an hour and a half, depending on how well you do it. So we've really been promoting the continuous rinse system, which is where you would install a second pump on your sprayer. It would be dedicated to the clean water tank. And now you can clean your tank while you're spraying the rinsate out onto the crop right away. So it saves a lot of time. It pushes the clean water to the boom almost right away. You don't have to leave the cab. It's a very efficient system, and people that have installed those systems are pretty happy with the time they're saving.
Okay. And other times that a cleaning agent is required or a good idea?
Yeah, so most labels call for something other than plain water. Most labels ask for ammonia. And ammonia is a great cleaner to use. That was demonstrated here in this demo. Ammonia was better than water. And the issue is, do you have an emulsifiable concentrate in your tank? So an EC is an oily solution, an oily formulation. And you can tell that it's an EC if the tank is milky white. Okay. If it's milky white, then you should use maybe a surfactant in addition to your ammonia. So that could be a non-ionic surfactant, but it could also be a commercial cleaner like All Clear or some other products like that contain surfactants in their formulation. Those are important because they're even better at removing the grease, the oily layer that can protect chemicals from coming out off the tank walls or off the plumbing walls.
Okay. And what were you showing during your presentation with this?
Yeah, so this is a little kit. So I picked this up at Wilger Industries, and so what they've done in Saskatoon is they've made components of sprayers that help you convert your boom to a recirculating boom. The recirculating boom is really cool because it keeps the product flowing. There are no dead ends anymore. So even if you're not spraying, it could still be pumping through the boom and going back to the tank. A recirculating boom makes it really easy to air purge the boom out. You don't waste product because you can push the air purge back into the tank. You could even rinse it and push the water back to the tank so you don't have any waste. It makes it a lot easier to prevent pesticide from just staying in the boom components too long. Very great innovation. What Wilger has done, if you haven't got a recirculating boom on your sprayer, You can go to places like Nozzle Ninja in Stettler. They'll sell you a kit for your sprayer, or you could try building one yourself with these components. It's not that hard.
Awesome. And is there anything else that you want people to know?
Yeah, I think, it's funny. I think that the responsibility for cleanout remains with the operator. So being thorough, I think, is very important. But I'm really happy to see that the manufacturers like John Deere here have come out with their own factory installed recirculating booms. Other sprayer manufacturers like Horsch and Agrifac also have them from the factory. And you've got RoGator's got them from the factory. So that is a really cool innovation that's helping farmers clean their sprayers better.
Nice. And do you think that's kind of the future for sprayers?
I think so. I think, I want to remove the responsibility from the farmer a little bit. I want to make it easier for the farmers to do the right thing, like clean their sprayers properly. And I think a part of that is the machinery has to be easy to clean.
I want you to join at Chatsworth Farm in the county of Vermilion River on Saturday, August 17th for their 5th annual Alberta Open Farm Days. Taking the artisan market, live music, cooking demonstrations, a barbecue, and farm tours. It's a free event you don't want to miss. Learn more by visiting chatsworthfarm.ca. We've got more coming up here on RealAg Radio. When we come back, you're listening to Rural Radio 147.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Infuse some energy into your next corporate event, customer meeting, or conference with RealAg Radio, Canada's national agriculture radio show. Create a unique experience at your next event with host Shaun Haney, broadcasting RealAg Radio live on SiriusXM, featuring exciting guests, captivating interviews, and the latest news from the agriculture community. Contact advertising at realagriculture.com or call 587-787-1795 to book your on location with RealAg Radio today.
We're going to finish up today's episode of RealAg Radio hearing from Dr. Kelly Turkington. Real Agriculture's Amber Bell had a chance to talk to Dr. Turkington from AFC about fusarium head blight, understanding a little bit more about the disease and what are some of the things we need to do to try to manage it.
The center, so.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about fusarium head blight today. What is it and what causes fusarium head blight?
Well, fusarium head blight is a fungal disease, and it's caused by a suite of different species of fusarium, but the most important species is Fusarium graminearum.
Okay, and what environmental conditions does it prefer?
Well, it likes somewhat warmer conditions, but the big factor is moisture. So frequent rainfall, high relative humidity, and the temperature really ideally for the pathogen is probably 20 to 25, but there can be some activity, and if you look at some of the forecasting systems, they look at a fairly broad temperature range, so about 10 C, depending on the system, to about 30 C. Once you get above 30 C, though, it tends to shut it down, but it's really probably ideally that 20 to 25 C.
So the Western Prairies right now, the spring that we've had has been pretty wet, I think, most over, so we're in a position right now where it's...
And what's happening now is the fungus is getting ready, so it is starting to grow on the old infected crop residues, which is the key sort of source of disease within a field or in an adjacent field. It's starting to grow, it's starting to develop the fruiting bodies, the perithecia on the residue, and those perithecia then release the ascospores that actually infect the cereal heads when they come out of the boot.
Okay, and then you said that a fungicide can treat it. So obviously it would be too late in the season to apply by the point you really know you have it. Are you at high risk in future years then, the next time you go and plant? Like, should you be considering a fungicide then for the next?
Absolutely. It's an excellent comment. Like, the risk is reflective of what has happened in the past. So if you've had consistent issues with downgrading, rejection because of deoxynivalenol content in the grain, and that could be wheat, or you're looking at malting barley and it gets rejected for malting status. Those are all indicators that you've had an issue with the particular disease. One thing that might not necessarily be too useful is yield, because if you look at the experience that growers maybe in Manitoba, North Dakota, Minnesota have had, even in the late 90s, they were starting some of the initial work with fungicide. A lot of the yield response wasn't necessarily due to suppressing fusarium head blight. It was actually controlling leaf rust or tan spot or septoria and so on. So often the big impact with fusarium graminearum and fusarium head blight is grade and mycotoxin contamination.
Okay, and what are some things that you see producers doing, like mistakes that they make when it comes to fusarium head blight?
You know, I would say not necessarily mistakes. It is an extremely challenging disease to manage. And if you look at the experience that colleagues like Marcia McMullen at NDSU, who's retired now, has had, and others and her colleagues, they really came to the conclusion that a producer needs to use an integrated approach to try and suppress the disease, the downgrading, the dawn, as best they can. So that means trying to avoid continuous cereal productions, trying to have rotations with at least 2 years between non-host crops, looking at choosing a variety that has the best level of resistance. And unfortunately, an MR is usually the typically the best level of resistance that we have for FHB and dawn suppression. The problem is that level of control with that resistance isn't the same that in terms of what a grower would encounter with stripe rust resistance with an MR or an R, or if you're looking at canola black lake. In the case of stripe rust or canola, that R is controlling the disease. You don't need to spray a fungicide. Unfortunately, in cereals, and the breeders have done a great job over the last 20, 25 years, we're seeing continual improvement in reaction, so reduced susceptibility, but you need to complement that MR rating and that variety with the rotation that I mentioned, and then the third factor is fungicide application. So you need to keep that in mind. It's a combined thing.
Was Dr. Kelly Turkington of AFC out in the field with Real Agriculture's Amber Bell for an episode of the Wheat School. And hey, listen, you can find more great pieces of content like that at our Wheat School. It is at wheatschool.com, and the Wheat School is brought to you by Alberta Grains, Syngenta Canada, as well as C&M Seeds. Long-standing sponsors. We've been producing a lot of content over the many years here. So if you go to wheatschool.com, you can find our entire library of agronomic content. And you can do it for all the different crop types, corn, soybeans, pulse, canola, wheat, as I mentioned. We even have a soil school as well. And a great way for you to stay up to date with timely videos in the field on the topics that you're dealing with, to help you make better decisions. That's the beauty of it. So check out all the different crop schools we have at Real Agriculture. And a big shout out to all of our sponsors of our crop schools. Okay, so that was a whirlwind agronomic tour here today as we're broadcasting from Edmonton, Alberta. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I'm going to be at the Seeds Canada meeting. Looking forward to that. So if any of our listeners do see me there, please say hello. And then off to the Calgary Stampede on Wednesday. So a busy week. Next week, Ag in Motion. And then I got a trip to Tennessee. I'll tell you more about that and what I'll be doing with Marabini a little bit later on in the week. If you have any feedback, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or, of course, you can call the Real Ag Feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio. Cheers, everybody.